Okay guys, today we're gonna walk through a little bit of diagnostics since I have one on my Toyota 4Runner. I have a P code which is 2195, which is a fun one. It's supposed to be for the air leak, or what's it say? It's throwing a code saying that the oxygen sensor air fuel ratio, the heater malfunction. So that's what it's reading off as. So this code is also known as kind of like an air leak or a vacuum leak. So in this case, let's go ahead and I'll read off the flow chart that you're supposed to follow in a repair program. Okay, so the first one would be checking the oxygen sensor, the air fuel ratio. Then checking if the oxygen sensor circuit is either having a broken or short. Then fuel pressure, fuel injector problem, PCM fault, air intake or vacuum leak, faulty fuel injector, fuel pressure too high or too low, PCV valve system leak or at fault or crack, broken, whatever, air fuel ratio sensor relay at fault, ECT engine coolant temperature sensor malfunction, mass airflow sensor malfunction, and air suction to the intake. All these are what the flow chart is going to read off as, and I tested all of them. We went through the whole diagnostic procedure on, from voltage drop on the sensors to checking all the wiring and making sure that there's no problems there. I did find one hose that did have cracks, which I did replace now, and that would be this guy right here, because I went to Toyota, and for some reason Toyota wanted to be a pain in the butt and discontinued this hose. So this hose for the 2004 to 2009 is no longer available. I placed the order, waited for a week, nothing. So I went down there and that's what they told me. Oh, the hose has been discontinued. Okay, so here is the other things that I'm gonna point out is that the mass airflow here is one of the faults at times for this, and all you have to do is just take this out and clean it. You use electrical cleaner, do not use brake cleaner or carb cleaner. Okay, you're gonna damage it because carb cleaner and brake cleaner are so abrasive, they're so strong that they can actually eat this plastic away, so you don't want to do that. Okay, and then under the sensor has an O-ring, so you can also replace that O-ring. Sometimes air is getting sucked in from there. Okay, but usually this thing will be having air leaks, and the way you diagnose this is anything from the air stream going through this engine all the way to the O2 sensor. This is how this is supposed to be diagnosed, but they don't tell you that. They tell you to follow the stupid flow chart, which I found is kind of wacky because it didn't find my problem. So the other way to find this problem quickly is I also use a propane tank, and yes, I know my knob is broken, and I use the vice grip to replace the knob, and it still works. But anyhow, so what's going on is I had that propane tank right there, and what you would do is turn it on and let that propane just kind of fizz over, or just go over any of these hoses, and if there's a crack or a break, the engine idle would just automatically start coming up, and that will tell you, that that's your problem. So in this, I didn't find any problems through the whole engine up here, and I did valve cover gaskets too, so that just completely waves out all the problems. I mean, change a seal up in here, and I put a hose onto this guy just to check if all my injector seals and everything were good, and they are. They didn't give me any problems. So I was just fishing around for this ghost and could not find it, and you wouldn't believe where I found this thing. I took it for a drive on the way to go pick up my kids from school. Then I heard it through the alleyway. I was like, what the heck? I started hearing valve tapping and clicking. I was like, oh crap. Remember what I told you at the beginning of this? Anything from the airstream or the mass airflow all the way to the O2. So it's exhaust gasket leak It's not in the flow charts. Okay, they need to add this into the flow chart, because that's where I found it. The driver's side gasket was gone, so it was leaking out of the side of it. So that's where I found my problem. So I wanted you guys to actually know this, because you're going to sit there and chase a ghost. And you know, at times I've seen it so many times before, that cars like this with this code will sit on the side of a shop, or they'll sit on the side of a dealership. And at times technicians don't want to talk about it because they can't figure it out. They're like, oh, I don't have time for it. They put it to the side just to make themselves look good. Well, you know, and not solving a problem can't look good that way, because the car's still stuck and you got no answers. So to answer your question, that's how you diagnose this code. Okay, you got to check all the vacuum, the air, anything from the mass airflow all the way to the O2 sensor. So anything in between there is your problem, if there is one. And mass airflow, if you clean it, it has to stay vertical. Do not allow that thing to go horizontal. And when it's drying, also leave it in its vertical state, because if you don't leave it in a vertical state and it dries, the debris can also go down and collect into the sensor and damage it. So if you're going to clean it, make sure it stays vertical and that everything drips out and down, not in, okay? Because you're going to have problems with that if you do, okay? So that's how I found my problem. I hope this helps you out, but that's my quick way of diagnosing this problem, okay? The P2195, that's how you do it, okay? And for the manifold gasket, again, here's what happened with this. Even though I replaced it, what happened is I torqued it back down to the 36 foot-pounds required by the OEM manufacturer. Guess what? I can still hear a little tapping, so I had to come back and tighten it another pound. The reason why is, if you forget, like I did, which is if you use an extension, you need to add a pound. But since I used a wobble, I needed to add 2 pounds. But in this case, I went all the way 2.5 to make sure. And yes, it went quiet. As soon as it went quiet, thing just turned the code off on its own. As I start the car, it just went away. I didn't even have to drive it. I didn't have to do a drive cycle or reset it. It did it on its own. Couldn't even find it anymore. It just went away. So that's how I diagnosed my problem. And hopefully, again, this helps you guys out. Okay? See you in the next one.